Today I'm going to talk about taking a burl and taking it to multiple bowls. And along the way, we're going to spend some time talking about burls, certainly. What are they? How do you find them? What should you do with them when you get them? I'm going to talk about bowl turning. So we will do some kind of reminders of pull cuts, shearing cuts, some of those things that I think can help you make a good bowl quickly. And then we'll do some coring. And the coring is a little bit of an anomaly right now because McNaughton Tools has gone broke in New Zealand. So there may be, when I was at the symposium as a demonstrator, Mike Mahoney, who is definitely worth knowing about. His YouTube is kind of the Bible of coring. So if you find him on the web, he does some things a bit differently than I do, but he does a great job. But he and Carter Tools borrowed some of my tools, and we're talking about, well, maybe we'll go corporate and we'll make some in the United States. So that would be interesting. But I was talking to Jeff over here, Jerry, excuse me, about one way. So certainly there are some other coring tools that you can use, and Jerry's a resource you may want to go to at some point too, because the one-way system is not only available but kind of getting richer. The Hunter tool carbide bits have really energized that system in a good way. But anyway, let's talk about burl to bowls. So I'm going to start by talking about burls. How many of you have ever turned a burl? Okay, so I mean, Iowa isn't Minnesota. It isn't Wisconsin. I just saw a map of how much prairie there was in Iowa, virgin prairie, and it looked a bit like North Dakota, actually. Rivers, except in the northeast part of the state, Decorah is where I went to school. The rivers, the trees were mostly in the wooded valleys, the river valleys. So you may have to be a little more creative, but we are going to talk about how you could find burls. Certainly one of the impetuses for me is that I make and turn lots of bowls. And if you're going to sell bowls, if I can turn a material that I can sell for twice as much for the same amount of work, it seems like a pretty good deal, doesn't it? So a burl is seen to be a premium piece, and I just love working with them. I think they're easier to work than a regular run-of-the-mill piece because the grain direction is very diffuse. And but let's talk about burls. So if you can put my slideshow up there, okay. Let's start at the beginning. How to harvest, section, mount, and core a burl into multiple bowls. So what is a burl? It is an abnormal growth protruding from the tree. And I'd love to have a good visit with Rob over here some more about burls, because I think he knows more than I do. But we're not talking so much about kind of the biology of them. One of the things that I've heard that's interesting is there probably are a lot of different things that happen to a tree that could cause the same sort of growth. But whatever, nobody knows how to cause a burl. And if you don't know how to cause a burl, you don't know what it is. So you have lots of ideas. They often tend to kind of clump in an area, which gives you some ideas. I remember harvested an old American elm burl. Does that tell you how old I am? And there were 27 dead trees with burls all around them. It's kind of like, you certainly makes you think. And it is, the disturbed and unusual grain is greatly prized by wood turners and all kind of woodworkers. So my goals identified an eyed or a layered burl, and I think some of the real wood biologists don't even find that interesting. I think it's very important if you're buying a burl that I think that is two categories that are helpful. How to best harvest the burl, make good decisions on how to cut it up, It's a bit like a diamond. You don't want to screw up this burl you've got. How might you obtain burls? There are some people who come upon my stuff and they say, you know, you're an okay turner, but where in the heck did you get those burls? So if you like the hunt, so bagging a big burl in my pitiful little life is one of the high points. And then begin at least to core the bowl into a nest of bowls. And so here's my goal, is to end up with a nest where I've used the wood very efficiently. I think it's a very sustainable idea with rare burls that we use the material very well. And I think people, when they buy something or they receive a gift of a bowl, some turning from you, these days they want to know the story. They want to know the story of the turner. They want to know the story of the wood. They want to know the story of the process. So there is there's some books that have a story about a fellow in England who was a pole lathe turner who showed how many cores he could make. So this is an old process. You know what a pole lathe is? You're pumping it like this. So even then, they cored out bowls to get maximum yield out of a burl. Okay, so two kinds of burls: an eyed burl, E-Y-E-D, and I'm going to just pass this bowl around. This was part of a stack. You know, I split up siblings and adopt them into families. I may be held to account for that someday, but this would have been probably the second largest in a set. But if you look inside, you can see the eyes. This is the prize, really. The eyes are part of a burl that I call, it's maybe a bit of a stretch, I call a tumor, because it is an uncontrolled cell growth well, we could talk some more about that along the way, but I call it a tumor. So you can tell it because it is a dome-like shape on the outside. So it has a full circular shape. Now, it may be multiple small circles, but if it is a totally random piece, that is not going to be an eyed burl. That's a layered burl. So a layered burl is usually the result of an injury to a tree. So this is a much more common sort of thing. It can be caused by a car bumping into a tree. The tree mobilizes its defenses to start creating a protective shell and put some bark over the top of it. I had a birdpeck tree, yellow-bellied sapsucker, came into this tree again and again. And on this tree that I still have some pieces of, for 50 years, each year, that yellow-bellied sapsucker would go into that and do sap wells around the tree, and the tree would heal it over. And the next year, the same thing would happen. 50 years. A happy life for generations of yellow-bellied sapsuckers, and not a happy life for the tree, I think. But there are lots of things that cause those, but they are going to be a lesser quality burl for me as far as a wood turner. Valuable, they've got some stress going on, they've got some figure, so they're worth working on, but they are not as valuable, and if you're buying them, if you end up with a layered burl instead of an eyed burl, you paid too much. The other thing is, once they start rotting, they delaminate, is what I call it, because for some reason, as those thicker, wider rings are put on, they do not adhere very well. So pretty soon, moisture and frost gets in there and splits them open, and you got some gluing ahead of you if you're trying to make that work. So layered burls, not so valuable. You see the one here, the big oak. Can you see that that's a bit random? I'm not sure what it was that damaged that tree, but certainly there was sign that there was damage deep in it, and it has a pretty random shape to it. Okay, the quality of the burl. So I just got an email today about someone who wants to buy a mesquite burl. He said, how do I know how much to pay for it? How about the quality? So what could you tell from the outside of the tree what kind of quality a burl might have? Any ideas? What about the condition of the bark? If the bark is starting to come off, it's probably been dead for a while, and it's going to be a little soft, a little punky inside. May still be valuable, and you know how you can find what true north is in the forest? It's got punky wood on the north side of the tree. And why is that? Because moss grows on the north side of the tree, holds the moisture in. So it might just have moisture in one part of the tree, but you'll want to check that out. So if I take, look at the difference. That one that's passing around right now. Does somebody have that? Can you just lift that up? Can you see that nice white ring around there? The sapwood, black ash, 8 years of sapwood. It's one of the ways you can identify it. And because it's so slow growing, sometimes that's only about that thick. But this is black ash. What can you tell about this? What can I tell by looking at that one? I'd say that it's been dead at least a year because the extractives from the heartwood have moved into the sapwood to even out the color. You know that Norwegian log builders routinely girdle a tree so that the tree dies, so that the extractives move into the sapwood, and it will all have fungal protection as a log cabin. But in this case, it's about uniformity. I had a picture at the very beginning. Oh, there it is down at the bottom. You see those bowls? So there were 100 bowls that came out of a burl. But can you see, if you look close, no bark. So the sapwood is gone, no bark. They were very sound, beautiful to turn, but they had been aging for a bit, kind of fermenting in their own skin. So I heard some of you, I hear that some of you are on the dry side of wood turning. Is that what I hear? And so green sounds to some of you, if you call it wet, we got to bring you along a little bit. We need about 20 new vocabulary words because green is all the way to charcoal. Charcoal even has 1% or 2% of moisture. And you get something like willow or box elder that's, 40% or 50% or something. Ash is about 20. But almost always, I would like to turn my greenwood when about 1/3 of the moisture is gone. And that's the moisture that we call the free moisture. It's in the vessels. It quickly comes out, and it means you won't get a bath. And it means that you'll be able to sand pretty well, not too bad, and it will turn beautifully. The edge will last longer because it doesn't get so hot. You will still be happy at the end of the day instead of so dusty and crotchety like you usually are, you dry side people. Come to the green. Okay. That was kind of an ad. Okay, but anyway, you can tell some things if they're starting to crack. So beyond a year, a burl actually goes a little longer before it starts cracking. I usually, a straight piece of log, once it's at 9 months, sapwood is disappearing, the bark is getting soft because the fungus loves that cambium layer. They go after it, loosens the bark. So I'm not very interested in a straight piece of wood if it's over a year. It's firewood then for me. A burl a little longer because the grain direction is pretty diffuse. They don't crack as easily. So you've got a little bit longer time. But when they start cracking, so can you see that one up at the top there? You know, if I'm turning a straight log, natural edge bowls out of a straight piece of log, I will not fix any cracks. They're just, you can't really do that good a job with them, so throw them. But a burl I'm willing to fight for, but I had to fight too much for that one. Do you see that one? Okay, so those are a little too far along. If you're trying to buy a log and it has some of those in them, you may want to kind of play with it, but you better not pay very much. Okay, so here's a big one. This is a black ash burl. Can you see that the right-hand picture I've taken from the north side? Right? Because the moss there, and so that was a bit spalted underneath, but this was 100 bowls out of this one. It's about 4.5 feet across, and it was very heavy and just beautiful. It just was so fun. So I love to have a burl that is a big burl on a small tree is ideal. A little burl on a big tree, it just is not quite so intense. But if it's all the way around, you know, a full ball burl is probably kind of the top of the line. Why, those are pretty great. How do I cut a burl? So I've got a couple of burls up here that we've been looking at. If I could get some camera up here a little close. These are not prime, but this one right here is a birch root burl. So these four came out of another part of that, and I'm going to pass that from this way. If you, warts and all, I went through the bottom of this. So I've got a piece of veneer on the bottom. And if I was selling to you, I'd probably come up with some song and dance about enhancing the value. But I just went through the bottom and didn't want to throw it. But here's what it came from. So how would you turn something out of that? You're going to have to eat some pizza or order some Amazon or something, because a cardboard disc is valuable. And then you want an awl of some sort. And so I would say this is going to be good for an 8-inch bowl. And one of the things that I would definitely do here, you can see compared to a piece of log, it's quite random. Your bandsaw, it kind of gets confusing, or your chainsaw. But eventually, you want to put a right angle down one of the sides. Can you see that? Down one of the sides, you want to put a right angle. And if you can do that, then you can cut the bottom parallel, bring it up, make it round. So you have to find a way to get a flat enough bottom to finish your cutting. And that starts with a right angle right on the side. That won't make much sense unless you try to make sense of it. And then a right angle compared to the side is what you want. So this one right here is much more random. Now you may say, well, that must be a layered, but its constituent parts are definitely domes. And then it's got quite a probably a rotten place in the middle there. And it's sound back here that I can see, so it doesn't go all the way through. So I think I might do something kind of creative, like pop that right over the top and do a thick bowl, kind of a dough bowl kind of approach, and leave to me, the strength of it is this pretty wild edge. And I'd probably leave that kind of wide. And so you're always looking at how to best use your space. And often on these, and I'm going to just show a couple of, if I can go back here to the slideshow. Okay, let's go. I think there was one right back here. Can you see the bark line there? So very often the way these burls come together, like box elder is quite a common burl, most common tree in America. Small towns, homesteads, but they tend to grow from smaller burls that grow up, and as they grow up, get bigger, they grow together. So if you take two small burls covered with bark and grow them together, what are you going to have? You're going to have a bark inclusion. That's a pretty obvious place to cut. Now, sometimes it's a nice look in a bowl. So if it seems pretty tight, you can use some super glue, and you can give that a bit of strength, but it's not going to be very strong. Sometimes they're encased deep down, and then they heal up at the top. Then you can pretty well use it in the side of your bowl, and it'll have some strength. But super glue isn't that strong. Glued bark isn't that strong, so you might be better off to cut that up in smaller pieces. One of the things for me as a seller, if I had perfect pieces of wood that I could make any size, I could not make them all like this, because I probably sell 10 times more 5-inch bowls compared to 14-inch bowls. So it's not a bad idea to make some smaller nests, because you're going to get more than of those small sizes that maybe you know what your market is. But okay. So you're looking at seams, you're looking cherry, probably the most common burl you're going to find around here. The ants love cherry. So you're going to have to, more than drying and cracking, ants are the problem, and you're going to have to harvest that kind of quickly, do something with it kind of quickly. So burls in my shop are a ticking clock. So I have lots of students. Sometimes they borrowed my coring systems, and I know they're going to break them because they got some burls. Men, and this is as gender stereotyped as can get, a lot of women that hoard fabric, but there are a lot of men that hoard wood for that perfect day that's going to come, and I'm going to do something magnificent, but I don't know enough to do it right now, and so the wood turns old and hard and impossible to core. So if you think you're going to learn to core on some of that old crap that you kept around your place for a long time, good luck. So you want something green and fresh, and box elder would be perfect because it's softer, it'll turn great, and okay, so ants, cracks, seams, all those sorts of things you're going to try to avoid, and you're also, remember that this is not a log where if you put a bunch of cardboard discs you can cut straight between and you'll get your full shape. This is a sphere, and so if I cut to the center from this, I'm going to undercut my bowl, and then I'm not going to get the size that I want. So you're going to have to make sure you leave some space so that you can have some freedom of the shape. You don't want purely a cone. It's not an attractive look. You need a curve. Okay. So I'd love to keep the full burl, hauling it even out of the woods, but sometimes that's not possible. And then you're just going to use this idea of how you're going to use the best shape, cut at the seams, cut at cracks, or just cut the sizes you want and get it out of the woods, and then get some sealer on those sides and ends. Generally, on regular wood, I'm not sealing the sides, but with burls, you need to put stuff on even the side grain, because there isn't really end grain and side grain. It's all liable to some splitting. Okay, so there's kind of what I said: seams, bark inclusions, cracks, ant holes. Now, I want to show you something about this one right here. So we're going to work on this one here in 1 minute. Maybe you can bring that camera in. I guess the other one showed it better. So the burl is a cone. that starts from a little place in the middle, and as the tree grows, it grows as a cone. Now, I don't want to bowl that shape, right? So it means that often the outer bowl in my nest is going to have some regular grain in it. Can you see right here? See, there's some regular cherry, and there's some really nice full-grained. So as I get in probably to the second one, I'm going to have full burl. But I don't mind having some of this. It even helps me tell the story better. Here's what regular cherry would look like. And now you're ready for the fireworks. Shazam. Okay. We could go back to, okay, just talk a little bit about finding burls. How many of you have found burls? Okay, how did you find them? Did somebody knew that you were interested and told you about them? So that's still going to be your best if you have friends. If you don't have friends, come up with some more money. But I think if people know that you are interested, and you know the best way to make that happen? Give them bowls. So woodturners have a problem. Carvers don't. They can fill their house with carving, and that's about a lifetime. I can fill my house in a week with turnings. We're fast. We're fast. So give a lot of bowls away. And I think one of the things to do, put them in silent auctions, put them in auctions, benefit auctions. You'll be famous, you'll be seen as generous, and the more people that know about you, the more they will let you know about burls. Are any of you here that sell? Do you do shows? So if you do, shows are a great place. And you might even put up a sign that says, I'm looking for burls, because people that have burls tend to know that they're valuable. They may have a pretty inflated notion of what they are, but they know they're valuable, but they don't know what to do with them. And very often they're sitting around until they get rotten and aren't any good. So I think if you can let them know that you would pay or you would barter, often people are more interested in bartering with you, that they would get some nice bowls from it than anything. So where in Iowa would you find burls? Decorah, where else? Jack's backyard. Okay, cool. Maybe some of you go up north, but do you know that there are small town newspapers in those places? And I think one of the very best places to go is put ads in small town newspapers. And it's interesting because the people that have the burls don't read their newspapers, but their grandmas do. I can't tell you how many times this has happened. Their grandmas know that there's, and these are some pretty hard scrabble folks. I usually, when I buy a burl, I often have to have some cash because they don't have gas to get home. So it's an interesting group. But I get calls because I have about 8 articles on my website, philholton.com, and one of them gets about 1,000 hits a day about how to harvest and sell your burls. It's why I'm often front page on Google, and I get calls from people deep in the woods that I can barely understand, and they just are desperate to sell their burl, and they don't have any idea because they're far from civilization. So I'm giving them ideas about that. Their wood turning club. Be nice to Dennis Anderson because he might get a call from my people, and he'll have to know who to call in the club. But put up a sign at Woodcraft. Put up a sign. Again, ad in the paper. A good website. But you have to kind of get out there and tell your story, and you can buy them. The place you can kind of reliably buy burls in the country is big leaf maple burls from the Pacific Northwest, because there they really grow them big, and you can run a company. I don't think you could do that. Maybe in northern Minnesota on black ash, but otherwise there are not that many of them. But you can buy them. I've often paid $1 to $3 a pound for burls. Those places you're going to pay $30, $50 a pound for burl. They're going to be frightfully expensive, but it may be worth it to you. Or maybe you talk to Phil, and maybe I have something for you. But I mean, sometimes people end up with a kind of a wealth of them that they should share because they're going to get old. Okay. Other ideas you have out there? You maybe don't want to tell anybody because you want to get those burls, but they are rare. But it would be a shame for them all to rot and not be used well. So get the word out there. Okay. I think we're going to leave this behind. Any questions about what we've talked about so far? Yes.
When you harvest a burl,
Yep.
let's say a rounded burl,
Yep.
you cut the whole limb off.
Yes. I mean, you generally have to harvest the tree. Yep. So if I've often been offered what you call caps, and I assume they are poached. I never buy those because I assume they've gone into the national forest or something and they've chopped it off. So 3 times now I've been approached, because I'm pretty high on Google, have been approached by TV networks to be featured in a Burls, a Burl show. And when they say, when I tell them who I am, they tend not to be too interested, because I say, you know, I know you're looking for some bearded, robust man against the wilderness. And I'm kind of a country pastor negotiating with old ladies for the box elder tree over the outhouse in their backyard in their small town. Said, are you interested in that? No, not so much. But those folks are doing a lot of poaching, because and we've had a deal with a couple of people. Mary Sue is busy checking the felony convictions in the Google, because there are people that are stealing stuff, and I should have known better than to buy from them. But there are illegal burls to be bought too, and I don't think you want to be part of that. Okay, all right. Let's talk now about